Peace, family. So I'm back with another one. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to my chosen ones about your silence is not the same as their silence. Meaning anybody that is going against the grain, you know what I'm saying? Our oppositions, we already know what we're talking about. But what brought me to this subject today was I was just kind of in this space the past couple days, just kind of forcing some more discipline, rules, and tactics within my own spaceship. And I realized for me, it doesn't matter how many beings is in this space beside me, because once you understand it's a spiritual war, they all kind of contribute like the same thing. This is almost why it's easy to pinpoint them and pick them out, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like if you see a squirrel, you're like, oh, there's a squirrel, you know, and you in Virginia, and then I go to Florida, I'm like, oh, there's a squirrel. I'm gonna expect the same thing from the squirrel. So once you understand that, then you can start diving in deeper and working on more tactics within yourself and being able to respond versus reacting to them more accordingly, you know what I'm saying? So, but I realized, like, being in space is silenced. Like, recently I was in a space where I was around another being and we're both kind of silenced, but our silences were different. And I could tell our silences was different because even when you're silent, silence only means that you are not using your throat chakra. It does not mean that you are not spiritually projecting your energy and doing your thing. It just means that you are not using your throat chakra. That's basically the main key ingredients to silencio. So once you remove the throat chakra and you just focusing on the silence and where people spend their time at spiritually, we all know the fruits will always show. So when you come out of that silent space, sometimes it shows immediately and sometimes it doesn't show immediately. Like, for instance, like, say I was in a silent space for a couple hours and, you know, around another being, and then all of a sudden now I'm talking. But when I start talking, it could be two things. But usually it's me diving into what I was just, you know, spiritually time traveling in. I'm usually gonna try to discuss some of that first, depending on the kind of being that I'm around. If that's not the case, because I'm not around that high of a percentage of a healthy being, then I'm gonna resort to turn away from this information and speak of something else. Maybe what's for dinner, somebody want to get on the game, I don't know, it could be anything, you know what I'm saying? Just something different opposed from what I was actually diving into. Because I realize when I'm diving in my spaces and in my silence and I'm around people who are opposition of me, the stuff that I build upon and I time travel to is the opposite of them. Because they're more focused on how they can control and manipulate and alter the next being or situation or transaction that they're having. And it's always weird to me being in that space, whether it's even on car drives. Like, all of us are in these spaceships, these cars, we riding, moving, and doing these things, you know what I'm saying? For me, I look at it like the Jetsons, we just not sitting up high. Like, everything outside of my inner space is outer space. All of this is outer space. So these cars is literally spaceships. We're driving through time. We're riding through time and space. You know what I'm saying? But even being in a car and in silences around beings is like, you'll start having little subtle things. Like, say you was in a car drive, because I know it's happened to me before. I've been in a car drive and it's been silenced, and I was in a space to where I wanted to talk, but I knew I was around somebody who was less of a healthier being, so I knew what kind of conversations. I just didn't feel like lowering my frequency that low, basically. So then I just kind of sit in my silence, which is just me in my own space getting other things figured out. And while I'm in this space, I'm lighting up in the inside because I'm thinking about positive productive things, about shit that I want to do, shit that's on the to-do list, shit that I've already done, to give me more strength and energy to show that, all right, yeah, you are about to take these steps, you are about to do this, because you done already proven that you about that life. You done it multiple times. So in my inner space, I'm kind of like smiling a little bit, because that's where my thoughts and stuff is at. And you can look over to the beings beside you, and their expressions is usually more so of a plain stare, just something more. But for the most part of what I always see is I always catch it's always like a slight frown. A slight frown. It's never like all the way like angry at the world, but it's always a slight frown. It's always a slight frown, and to me that's always a reflection of how you're actually feeling and vibrating on the inside. Because in order to just have your muscles just naturally relax that way, you have to be engaging them in order to react that way from within. It's no different when you just think a thought and then you just start smiling. It starts getting bigger the more and more you think about it, and then you just start laughing to yourself. Motherfuckers look at you like, what you laughing at? You know what I'm saying? It comes from within. So that's how I always know our silences is different. And like I was saying before, I'll be riding in the car in my silence with them. We'll go to a store or somewhere and pop out, and then all of a sudden, like, the clerks are being like extra nice or friendly, you know, or we went to a drive-through or something, and like one of the few drive-throughs I go through is Chick-fil-A, which I know is trash. I know it's trash, but I cut out all the other 50 million of them they have. All right, so that's the one I allow occasionally. And they usually will be fucking having like an extra fry or like a frosty or like a milkshake or something ready. And I'm just like, it's crazy the spaces that we're in when we're not using our throat chakra, and it still reflects outwardly. And I done had other beings beside me sitting around in their space and doing that weird frowning thing, and then there'll be like some witchy stuff will start happening around them if they're in that space long enough when we're not communicating or talking, you know what I'm saying? Or they're figuring out a way to kind of like get some kind of weird reaction out of me. And I just be thinking to myself, when they do that, it's just like, yo, that shit is weird. You done been in your inner space this whole time, and that's what you come up with? Like, you didn't have no ideas or nothing. You wasn't in nowhere trying to reach a higher frequency. Your ass was in the past doing this backpedaling. You know what I'm saying? Like, the running man backwards. Like, that shit is crazy to me. How people can spend so much time in that space knowing that it's not going to get them anywhere. But I know not to spend too much time in that space trying to even figure that out. And I just have to know that, okay, that's opposition. It's, unless they're pulling themselves out of that shit, you're going to drive yourself into some kind of weird ass hole like a yarn ball. And, you know, they just all spirally, you start pulling, you're like, yeah, I got this. You're like, oh shit, I got this. Now you done kicked the ball. You just trying to stretch it all the way out now. So anytime you start diving into somebody else's inner space and it starts getting confusing and chaotic, yes, we all have a lot of shit going on, but everybody's space is not confusing and chaotic. People can jump in my space and they can see I am very direct. There is no confusion and chaotic. You know, if anything, I'm trying to be as completely clear and sincere as I possibly can be. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the things that gave me and gives me strength from within when I communicate outwardly. Like, in order to use these words, you have to know how to put the power on them to use them properly. That's why when you see the opposition sit in these silences and then they talk, it just goes right over our head, or we don't want to hear it. It just sounds like bullshit because it doesn't have no weight to it. We already know what kind of beings they are. They don't really put in a lot of footwork towards doing things in a non-selfish manner, I should say, because they will do things selfishly. I done seen some take some big steps selfishly. You know, they probably stepped on a few people around them, but they still took the steps selfishly. So I ain't gonna make it seem like they won't take no steps. They just won't take none in this direction. And if they do, it's like little baby steps, and they gotta shoot back over here real quick. You know what I'm saying? Because master is like, nah. You ain't ready for that life over there. Because I'm gonna have to put my foot all the way down on your neck if you think you're gonna leave this opposition and go join this healthy team. I don't work too hard to get in this vessel. You know what I'm saying? Just because somebody is silenced does not mean that they are just sitting there being silenced. You know what I'm saying? Because I know when I'm not using my throat chakra, I am thinking in some kind of space. So when I'm around other people, I'm assuming that's what the fuck they doing. I'm assuming that you're either thinking and building on some ideas, and if you're not spewing those out, or what you have going on, or your current problems that you have going on, or some of your own insecurities that you know, it's a lot of things that we go through in our own inner space that we don't discuss when we're not using our throat chakra. So when somebody says, well, what you think about? Nothing. Oh, bitch, you're lying. Oh, my nigga, you lying. You're lying. Clearly, if you ask me, I don't even want to talk about it right now. Be more clear in what you're saying, you know what I'm saying, opposed from just giving these little bullshit ass lies, you know what I'm saying. But our silence is not the same as their silence. We're working and growing and raising frequencies and figuring out how to keep our energy more balanced, because some of us are living in spaces with these beings. So when we are in our silence, we're fighting this fight of not reacting the way they want us to react. You know what I'm saying? We're fighting this fight of, this is going to build my strength right here, so that way I don't have to keep feeling myself get riled up every time this person engages me or says something to me, or I hear this person's name, or I'm in this place or vicinity. You know what I'm saying? That's completely different than this silence over here, and you can see all the frowning and you already know what space they're going into. We don't have to dive into that shit, but we already know where all that shit leads to. That's why it went down and backward. This side was going upward. That shit just went down and backward. We already know which way the vibe is going, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't want to run up too long. Tapping everything down below. Peace and love to the kings and queens.